Let me remind folks that we have the public comment sign-up sheet. We have 3 that have signed up. We're going to do our best to adhere to the council's direction, and that is once the gavel, after we pray, let's just say it that way, after we pray, if there someone hadn't signed up to speak on one of the agenda items, then it'll be too late. You can certainly comment after the meeting during the public comment section. We also are asking you to sign up for that. Ms. Whitby is over there, and with that introduction, let me, with a great deal of pride and certainly welcoming to our 3 new council members who are with us, Beth White, Maurice Taylor, and Sam Baggett, and joining the 5 council members who've been here, and we are looking forward to a great year. It's going to be a challenging year as we face an economy that has a lot of question marks ahead of it. We're going to work very hard to do all we can to minimize any impact on our citizens. I know we had a staff meeting today, and I underlined with our department heads the challenges that we feel we may be looking at. So I know with a lot of effort and certainly working as a team to bring this city forward, we'll continue to look forward to experiencing significant progress. And with that, let me go ahead and call this first 2009 meeting of the North Little Rock City Council to order. And Ms. Whitby asks for you to please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Ross?
Here.
White?
Here.
Taylor?
Here.
Robinson?
Here.
Gaines?
Here.
Baggett?
Here.
Height?
Here.
And Witcher?
Present.
The quorum is present, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Whitby. Can I ask that we stand for the prayer by Alderman Gaines, followed by the pledge by Alderman Baggett?
Our gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the many blessings you've bestowed on us. Help us, Lord, tonight that we will do and say things that we please in your sight, Lord, and lift up those that are sick, those that are in pain, those that are not doing well. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To accept and file the special and regular.
Motion made and seconded that the minutes of the December 22nd meeting, which was a regular meeting, in addition to the December 31st minutes, which was a special meeting of the City Council, be approved as filed. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Whitby.
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
We have 4 communications. One of the things, and I think the new council members have all been here when we've done this, one of our regular practices is when there are multiple communications is make what we call a blanket motion. That blanket motion essentially is asking that all of those that are listed be accepted and filed. We also, as a part of our procedure, respect the wish of any council member to pull any one of the communications from that blanket motion. So regularly on communications, I ask if there is a blanket motion.
So moved.
Second. And with that, does any council member want to pull any one of the 4 that have been listed? On the motion, Ms. Whitby.
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson? Gaines? Baggett? Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
We have no scheduled presentations, no scheduled public hearings. The citizen comments, and it's not necessarily that we have to do it, but if it appears to be regular with the flow of the business of the council, sometimes when we have comments, then we, will, in some instances, either at my request or any council's member request, certainly consider acting on the legislation subsequent to the time the comments are made. We have 2 people who have requested to speak on R0905, and I'll open the microphone for those 2. So before us now, Ms. Whitby, why don't we just go ahead and read R905 so that, that those in our audience will know what we're talking about.
Yes, sir. A resolution approving a revised plat of lots A, B, C, D, and E of Block 42, Town of Argenta, resolving a boundary dispute.
Before I go ahead and open it for the comments on those, Mr. Voyles, you want to come to the microphone and give us a little bit of background on that piece of legislation? And like I said, unless there's an objection, we'll go ahead and deal with that subsequent to the public input and council discussion.
Back in 2004, city purchased property here from the railroad. The property boundary was, as described by the railroad, was an 1870 deed. We're proposing a line, generally what people are using as their backyards going towards that alley, which would transfer that property to those 4 property owners here at the corner of Magnolia. We have a second piece of legislation. The house on the corner is the Lewis family house. The line went through that house. They signed that house over to the city with the understanding that we would return it with a replat defining the rear lot line. So the problem here is back in 1870, the federal government gave the railroad property through town. Homes were erected after that, and there was no replat of those boundaries, which means there's overlapping description. And what we're asking permission for is that if we can all come to agreement, give the mayor the authority to sign the plat on behalf of the city as one of the owners of that property, and then have the other owners sign for the new boundary, and it's shown as this, as in red. That land would go to the new property owners. I do have a map if you want to see it up close.
Well, Ms. McQuaid is here, and another lady who lists an address of 710 Olive. Can you tell us, what you know about that piece of property?
That property is split 2 lots. It goes back. They go back towards the alley, and the railroad property boundary went into their, or is the rear 30 feet or so of their property was a part of that railroad description. It's called Lot E on a replat, and we would propose that the city grant back about 18 feet from what the railroad line was, with the apparent line that has been used by that property owner.
So what you're saying is you are recommending that we grant the apparent property line back to the ownership?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if and I know they can come up here in just a second, but is that, do you know whether that's been objectionable or not? Have you been dealing with these property owners?
I've met with them and their lawyer. They're asking to have some time to run a full abstract on their property, and we had Beach Abstract do that, which brought up all these errors, and they can do that. It'll give a timeline of what the sales were. It's just that back, people building along the railroad, I guess they were inexpensive homes, but for some reason did not redefine property away from the original city, which was just a cookie cutter type plat, and it just cuts through railroad property. In this case, the federal government gave the railroad a certain property that cut through that plat, and the homes were built after that, but no one corrected the errors.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Is there any need for us to act on this at any reasonable speed?
There's no urgency. We don't have a developer on this, and all the legislation would do would give you the power to sign for that, should we all come into agreement that this is a reasonable compromise.
Okay, well, we're going to consider, Ms. Whitby, that this has been read once. Any questions from Mr. Voyles? Thank you, Mr. Voyles. All right. The microphone's open for citizen comment. Ms. McQuaid or Ms. Haney? Is that right? H-A-N-E-Y? Oh, I'm sorry. That was the middle one. I'm not even going to...
That's fine, sir.
Okay.
We were just asking for at least 30 days or more so we can get this
Research abstract.
get this research abstract so we know where we're standing at.
Okay.
That's all we're asking for.
I don't know
At this
that there's any reason why we shouldn't do that. So let me just indicate to y'all, we'll probably read it again at the next council meeting, but won't act on it unless we've heard from y'all that it's okay, and plan on actually, Ms. Whitby, voting on it the first council meeting, which will be the second Monday of February.
Of February.
Okay?
We appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, we've read it once, and then now we'll hold that, Ms. Whitby. Let's go back to the, unless there's anything else, we're ready to go to the agenda. Oh, wait a minute, we do have one more. I'm sorry, Mr. Ard. You requested to speak on 0903, or at least ask a question.
My question is, when you say sun up to sundown, is what are you doing sun up to sundown when the, what they do on the weather, say sun up is so-and-so and sundown? That's the first part of the question. Second part of the question is, snow cone trucks go after dark. Is this going to stop them from going after dark?
I don't know if I mean, I haven't looked real close at it, and you can answer that, but I think this is more peddlers that knock on doors, but I'll let Ms. Ross.
I'm sure that Jerry Reagan is here. He said he would be here tonight, but from what I understand, the ice cream trucks have a different business license than the peddlers do. It's not the same license, and in this, it does give the exact organization, or what is it, Mr. City Attorney Jason? What is it called, the Naval?
Right, and I think one of the things that Mr. Ard was pointing out is whenever you say sunset, when is sunset? I mean, there's one common approach that looks around and says, well, when the street lights are on and it's dark outside, it's obviously beyond sunset. But whenever you put an ordinance in effect, it's always good to have a point of reference which one can always rely on. And that's why we've inserted the United States Naval Observatory. They publish annual tables. They can tell us in 2 years from now when sunset is. So their tables, it's a uniform standard that can be relied on in case that argument comes up. No, it wasn't dark outside. Well, you know, you can look at the time on the ticket and you can see when sunset is, and then you'll know.
Well, I know that you know, there is a hill between me and the sun where it goes down. And I can see that sun when that hill isn't in the way another 3 or 4 minutes before it actually sets. So it sets from my backyard sooner than it actually sets somebody else's backyard. I'd almost, you know, first of all, I don't know what we want to do with regard to specific language in the legislation, but you know, I certainly intend for the sun to be sufficiently set before we write tickets, and I'd mean maybe give a 15-minute leeway or some tolerance period like we do in some of our enforcement issues, but I'll leave that up to Ms. Ross.
Are we going to discuss this one now, or are we going to wait till later?
Well, Mr. Ard, I think, has his question, and I just, right now, since there was just one comment, I just as soon wait to bring that up in the regular discussion unless the council feels otherwise. With that, let me go ahead and, unless there's anything that I'm overlooking, go to new business. Ms. Whitby?
Yes, sir. Resolution 0901.
Please call it.
A resolution appropriating $52,496.50 for payment of expenses in connection with the November 4th, 2008 general election and November 25th, 2008 runoff election.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Discussion on the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
Resolution 0902, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
A resolution expressing an intent to construct a new substation, authorizing employment of an engineering firm for the project, authorizing acquisition of property and easements, authorizing reimbursement from bond proceeds, appropriating funds in support of the project.
Move for adoption, but I'm
Second.
sure you want to discuss it.
And let me, Mr. Smith, Mr. Russ, will you come to the microphone, please? Motion made and seconded. We're in discussion. Let me just give a little bit of an introduction, and then anybody that has any questions. One of the things that, there's several things. One is, as many know, there's a lot of activity going on in the eastern part of our city. Over the last several years. In fact, I asked the manager of our electric department, Mike Russ, how long this had been under discussion with the electric department. The answer was somewhere between 4 and 5 years in terms of the need to add an additional substation in the eastern part of our city. And in fact, the location generally is just on the other side of the lake that abuts the eastern side of the Deluxe or Rank Video property, if I'm not mistaken in my recollection.
Correct.
And one of the things that came up in discussion with the new company, Caterpillar, was their desire to have redundant power. Redundant power is a alternate feed that would serve as a backup in case an interruption of electricity was, we'll say, done on the primary feed, and obviously that was extremely important to them. In our negotiations, we looked at various alternatives in order to address that redundancy. One of those alternatives was to run a new line from an existing substation. The approximate cost of that was somewhere in the $900,000 to $1 million range. Another approach that was considered was the potential to construct on-site generation or backup generation that would be done by a backup generator. A number of our businesses do have that backup generation that obviously kicks in should there be an interruption of power. That price tag was somewhere between $3 and $4 million. It was considered in large measure, even though it was more costly, because there would be a potential payback to the city. The payback is that we are right now looking at not all, but most, and maybe even all, businesses, including the city, that have backup generation now. There is technology out there that would give us the opportunity to put on remote switching for this generation, and that remote switching, it would be our intent to have available for use during what we call high power demand times, which mostly would be in the summertime when we have a need to purchase what we call peaking power. Peaking power is the highest cost power that we have in normal cost acquisition modes, because that's the power that you need only for relatively short periods of time during historically times when there's a high demand, and most of that would be during high air conditioned use during the hottest days of the summer. And that remote switching would give us the justification to enter into agreements with the various people around the community that have this generation that would give us the opportunity to have a number of megawatts available, and in exchange for that we would agree to maintain and replace and to supply the fuel for companies that signed up. If that's not correct, Mike?
That's correct.
So that was an approach that was looked at. The third approach, which we're presently recommending, involves the moving upwards the construction of that substation in the eastern part of the city. That was going to be recommended to me, and then I would have in all likelihood been recommending that to this council for additional demands and opportunities that are going to be in the eastern part of our city. And we think that this new plant will accelerate that need by several years anyway. So the utilization of that substation, and then we'll say the line from that substation, the guesstimated cost is about $100,000. So that's essentially where we find ourselves. If there's any council member that has any question, I'll open the floor for either questions to me or to the electric department.
I'm sorry, Mayor. All right, so we're talking about a new substation, is that right, Mr. Russ?
That's correct.
Okay. Have you looked at the Faulkner Lake sub, adding a transformer at that location?
That would be, that's one of the options that we looked at. The problem with the Faulkner Lake location is it would not allow us to pick up some load further out toward the interstate that's currently fed off of a metering point from Entergy. And they have a desire for us to get off of that metering point and us pick that load up. Also, it would be more costly to serve the anticipated growth that we expect to occur around the interstate from the Faulkner Lake location.
Very good. Okay. Have y'all looked at how many megawatts or what demand we're going to have at the CAT plant?
The CAT plant, a maximum right now, because the engineering design work is being completed, we've talked about is 15 MVA. It'll probably be somewhat, a little bit less than that, but it's going to be close to 15 MVA.
You wanted to tell us all what MVA is?
15,000 KW. That's a city services building over here is about 250 KW. So it's about 60 times as large as the city services building in terms of
What kind of
electrical load.
demand?
Pardon?
What kind of demand?
That is the demand.
Well,
15,000 KW
Okay, how
demand.
about load factor then?
Load factor is going to be 2 shifts, which would put it between 60 and 65, 66% load factor.
It's pretty heavy. Okay.
Yes, a good load shape.
That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Alderman
I'm
Height?
just curious as to what kind of time frame we're looking at as far as if we do approve this legislation, how long will it be before this substation will be up and running?
Well, now, the site currently can be fed from the existing facilities that are in place. This is the requirement of the customer to have a duplicate redundant feed. We would be looking at approximately a 24-month, 30-month at the outside time period to design, construct the facilities, and get everything operational. There's a lot of lead time on a transformer of that size.
You're looking at 2 to 2.5 years.
Correct.
Any other questions? With that,
We do have an amendment.
We do have an amendment, I'm sorry. It's on everyone's desk there. Does Ms. Whitby have it? You also have that too? I'll let Mr. Carter read the amendment.
The amendment is alterations that were recommended by bond counsel. Primarily, if you'll refer to Section 3, you can see the primary basis for it. Bond counsel preferred their language, which I suppose I do too, over mine, over the intent to reimburse. That's important because whatever expenditures that we have in preparation to construct the substation, we want to be able to reimburse ourselves from the bond issue so that all the costs are rolled into the bond issue and we're not out operational money for the construction of the substation.
so essentially, the amendment, your amendment would be the substitution of this language in its entirety?
That's correct.
Is that what your motion is?
Yes, it is.
Is there a motion made and seconded that the amendment that we have in front of us be substituted as drafted? Any further discussion on the motion to amend?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor? Yes. Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
Now do I have a motion to adopt as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
On the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
Next item,
Resolution 0903, Mayor Hayes.
please call
A
it.
resolution authorizing the construction of public facilities and the extension and assignment of services in order to secure and develop industry within the city of North Little Rock.
Can I get a motion, and then I'll explain it and then answer any questions? I think we've got Mr. Russ and Mr. Reynolds who are here in case any additional questions need to be addressed. Why don't y'all go ahead and come on back?
Move for adoption.
Motion made and seconded. Let me go, this is, most of the remainder of the, what we'll refer to as incentives that were involved in the discussions with regard to Caterpillar. Let me take them one at a time, and then we can ask questions on them one at a time rather than collectively. The M37 Economic Development Rider, as Alderman Witcher knows, a rider is a part, and help me too, Mr. Russ, if I misspeak, but a rider is a part of our rate structure, which we have used this, what we refer to as an M37. Energy has a similar, if not exactly duplicate, rider, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. I believe it's still in existence. It's put in existence in the early 80s.
And it's my understanding that what this rider does upon its adoption, and we've already used it at least once with regard to Rank Video when they came in. So, you know, this geography, we'll say, has a history of utilization of this rider, that it is a discount off of the demand charge.
That's correct.
There's two basic components of an electric charge or electric bill. One's demand, the other's energy. So this would be off of the demand charge, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask Mr. Russ. The basic explanation of the rider is that there would be a 50% discount during the first year of operation off of the demand portion of the energy bill, of the electric bill. The second year, it reduces to 40%, the third year to 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, and it expires at the end of 5 years.
Correct.
You know, even with the utilization of that, we will not be subsidizing our purchase cost of electricity. In other words, you know, all of the energy costs that we will be acquiring in terms of energy will be covered. And obviously, as the years go by, you know, we will end up having a greater recovery of our rate structure vis-a-vis the rates that will be charged the company.
That's correct.
Okay.
We will always exceed our embedded cost of purchase power.
With that explanation, let me just go ahead and take these one at a time and see if any council member has any questions of the electric department or us on that M37 rider.
Question. On, under Section A, the M37 Economic Development Rider, Jenny, where it says the manufacturing facility in North Rock is declared operational and shall continue for 5 years, when is it considered operational? Is that...
We'll let them come up to full production. When they're in the up and down early phases,
It won't.
then you're not giving them the benefit of really what they're trying to do, which is accelerate their payback on their project
Okay.
and make it feasible.
So you wouldn't want to start any
So
sooner
it probably
than
would
you'd have
not
to?
really
Okay.
start until 2010.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions? Part B is the electricity consumed. This has to do with the green tags. Let me remind the council, if I'm inaccurate, add to that. The previous manager of the electric department, Joe Gertz, brought to us for the second time about a year and a half, maybe close to 2 years ago, essentially a renewal of a contract that we already had with Green Mountain Energy, I believe.
Correct.
And Green Mountain Energy had purchased our green tags, which is essentially a 1 megawatt hour of generation from a renewable source. And obviously, I think everybody knows what our renewable source is, and that is hydroelectric power or water in terms of the utilization of fuel. Again, in a broader description of renewables, wind is considered a renewable, solar is considered a renewable, obviously, again, hydro, thermal, geothermal, solar, if I hadn't said that. Those are considered renewables, and this market has grown up around the movement toward both mandatory as well as permissive requirements. And as I understand it, roughly half of the states in the country have mandatory goals that have been set with regard to generators, principally of power, and that those generators by a certain time period need to have a certain part of their generation reflected in renewable energy sources. Right. For example, California, I believe, has to have 20% by 2010.
They moved that back. I believe it was 2015 now.
Okay, 2015, but that's generally the direction that, and roughly half the states have that kind of a requirement, and that the acquisition of these credits has given them or those that have those mandatory markets the opportunity to meet those demands vis-a-vis the acquisition of these credits. In other words, the generation of power and the marketing of credits are basically two different concepts. We have been receiving 50 cents a green tag under the terms of our contract. The last time that we negotiated the contract, one of the provisions I wanted to make sure was in there was that if some opportunity came along for us that we would have an opportunity, or chance to opt out of that contract with Green Mountain. The language of the opt-out, it's my understanding, is essentially twofold. One, it has to be a customer of ours, and number two, they have to consume an amount equal to or less than the amount of credits that they receive. Obviously, Caterpillar, based on its projected load, could acquire roughly half of our credits. Now, again, I want to mention that there are two markets that are available. One is what I'd call the voluntary market. I think it might have a different term.
That's what it's called, voluntary
The
market.
voluntary market. And that voluntary market, you know, Arkansas is one of the 25 states that do not have a mandatory requirement. And up until the economy started going south, and I don't know what the latest amount is, but during our negotiations, or the latest number, you know, the local voluntary market was somewhere in the $5 range.
That's correct.
We don't know what it is today.
No.
But we do know that it's somewhere between 50 cents and we would assume $5. We don't think it's gone up. The compliance markets, you know, it's greater, and so, you know, the formula that we have recommended you know, in the negotiations was essentially whatever the market is would be what we would value our green tags at. It's no cost to the city. These are it's an evolving process, to be honest with you, evolving in the sense of, you know, the direction that we feel, you know, the country's going, that these very well may have more value as the market becomes, you know, more green oriented. At the same time, you know, there is an opportunity for the state to be one of those 25 mandatory goal markets that are out there. If that's the case, then, you know, we as a generator may have to attribute some of those to our requirements. So it's an evolving value. We think it's going to be, you know, continue to be a beneficial value to us. But we've been receiving somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000 a year. So it's not a great amount at this point, but it's certainly something that we think would be beneficial. It was very much of an inducement to Caterpillar. They have expressed some strong desire in being as they are, very environmentally friendly, and right now, you know, we're involved in a voluntary market, and although that voluntary market is softening. So I'll be happy to respond to anything that I said that needs any amplification.
No, you did a good job describing it.
I appreciate it. Alderman Gaines?
So the green tags mean that we'll have that for 5 years because of but the green tags are like a credit on their bill?
Well, no, it won't be a credit.
When you generate, say at the hydro plant, a megawatt hour of electricity, really there's two things being produced: the electricity that we sell to our customers and the energy attribute called a green tag. They theoretically can be sold to anybody. We have a contract with Green Mountain Energy to sell our tags to them. Now, we can exercise a provision of that contract that says instead of selling them to you, we can instead sell them to our customers. So a L'Oreal, some of the manufacturer that's environmentally conscious, because we're in a voluntary market, can say, I want to buy those to offset my carbon footprint. And so that's what they're using them for, is because they do get credit against their carbon dioxide emissions, and it stacks them up favorably within the marketplace.
So there's no discount. They're not turning around and
okay.
discount off the bill. You know, what these credits are things that the company could use in claiming, at least in Arkansas. Now, you know, as this market evolves, they may be able to allocate some of these credits to some of their other plants, you know, around the country. You know, that would be a possibility. But the value here in Arkansas is voluntary, and as we indicated, you know, that we found out that market softened a little bit because it's a voluntary market, and the claim to be green, you know, in tough economic times may not be, you know, as valuable as it would be in, you know, better economic times. So,
Is there any other company? We're not going to do this for any other company, though, right? Just it? Green Mountain Energy is the one you've been We'll be
Well,
substituting.
well, right now, there are negotiations, you know, if we do this, this would, and based on our average generation out to hydro, recognize that we only get the amount of megawatt hours that we generate in terms of green tags. You know, we have been talking to another company. You know, we may be recommending a sale of those, but in terms of this inducement, no, we're not recommending this to any other company.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on the green tags? I think number C we've already talked about, that we would have a dedicated line from the new substation to the facility. That's part of the redundant power discussion. And the final thing that's a part of this, and we had an opportunity to visit, you know, with the wastewater department. They have agreed to help us support this effort by directing up to $800,000 toward the construction of a pretreatment facility. You know, it's kind of an interesting in terms of the discussion, because there is a pretreatment facility on the grounds now that, you know, before the actual closure of the sale, you know, that existing pretreatment facility would generate about half of what the projected waste stream is from Caterpillar. So the size of the existing pretreatment plant would need to be doubled. Now, how do you do that? Well, number one, we really didn't know for sure whether or not that existing plant was still in service. If so, we didn't know how it would be that it could be added in terms of the capacity. And so there was some real concern about how to address this need to deal with the waste stream. So, you know, this discussion came up about, you know, putting a cap on the support. It could very well be more than that. Indeed, if it's less than that, if it's more than that, then the company is responsible for it. If it's less than that, then that issue is resolved based on, you know, whatever the actual value is actual cost is to deal with the pretreatment of the waste as it goes into the waste stream. Because again, with the negotiations being somewhat sensitive in terms of not being wanting to reveal the exact name or nature of the company, you know, this area remained somewhat ambiguous, and we tried to fix this inducement based on what we felt would be certain caps and guidelines. You know, my understanding that the Wastewater Commission and Department, in addition to that, is strongly considering an interceptor, which I don't think, is Mr. Mills here, an interceptor is something that would, again, you know, be somewhere in the $2 to $3 million range. If the commission goes forward with that, it would be much greater than the capacity would be much greater than the need to simply serve this facility. It would be of additional aid in serving not only Caterpillar, but also continued development of a significant capacity out in that area. And in fact, that's one of the things that we're going to look at to try to, we'll say, be able to step up to the plate when it comes to this economic stimulus package. That would be one of the benefits that would contribute greatly to that. So we're going to work with the wastewater department to try to advance that as an opportunity. And Mr. Mills, you know, we're talking about your interceptor, we're talking about the Wastewater Commission's discussion and willingness to support the $800,000 for the pretreatment facility. And I explained about the existing pretreatment facility that's there, but we don't know whether it works, and if it does, we don't know how we might be able to convert the additional capacity of it. So with those, if there's any questions by the council on the wastewater portion of it. And if you heard some of what I said and I need...
Well, I did hear most everything except my trip
walking
in
across.
Here. Yes, walk across. The interceptor has been a completed design for over 3 years now. We've been waiting for a time when there was a real need. It's not a good thing to have a large gravity line in there when there's not enough water in it to carry it like it's supposed to. So it appears now that development in that area is going to support the construction of this interceptor. The The estimated cost 3 years ago was about $2.7 million. We expect it to be in the neighborhood of $3.5 million now. It's ready with the exception of right-of-way acquisition, and we think it'll take about a year to construct. So we think it will be online by the time Caterpillar's ready to use it, and it'll replace 2 pump stations, existing pump stations, so we eliminate that cost, and a force main that's about 2 miles long. So it's a win-win thing. It'll serve a number of acres, hundreds of acres on the east side of what we refer to as a rank video structure, and some acreage on the west side of Interstate 440 north of Faulkner Lake Road between Faulkner Lake and Highway 70, mostly residential but some commercial there. And we're very excited about Caterpillar coming, of course, and we feel like it's just a catalyst for everything that's going to happen out there.
800,000 coming from your reserves. 800,000, where's it coming from?
That'll be from reserves as well, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And there's no way, I know this is the silliest question I've ever asked you, but there's no way Caterpillar can back out after us doing all this, is there? Huh?
Let me just put it this way, we wouldn't be doing this if Caterpillar would back out. So, I mean, some of it we would go forward with. I mean, I don't know whether we go forward with this on this timetable or not, but the substation as well as the interceptor, we're going to pursue that, particularly with this stimulus package because of other development, that we feel not only will be generated by Caterpillar, but will be going on anyway in the eastern part of the city. So I really don't think that's an issue at this point, assuming that some of what, and again, in these negotiations, as I said, as we've talked about it, by nature, we're subject to freedom of information, and we certainly recognize that. I know I signed a confidentiality agreement to the extent that I wasn't contrasted or conflicted with the FOI, and so by the way that these negotiations go, you have to go forward with some degree of good faith. And as I went forward with these, these are things that I felt not only the city attorney, we had consultation with the city attorney's office, I felt were reasonable, and I thought that the council would be willing to support. But again, I did that based on an assumption and obviously a desire, but I did represent to the company, as I continued to do, that this council was the one that would have to pass on these.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Any other questions or discussion? Do we have any amendments on this, Mr. City Attorney? On the motion to adopt, Ms. Whitby?
Ross? White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
Resolution 0904, Mayor Hayes.
All right. Please call it.
A resolution authorizing the extension of wastewater utility services to certain property as
Mr. Voyles, tell
described-
Mr. Mills he might want to hang just a second or two.
as described herein and generally known as the Hillard Road Development.
Do I have a motion? Can I get a motion on this, and then we'll see if anybody has any questions?
So moved.
Second.
All right. It's my understanding, and Mr. City Attorney, you can help me, that the reason that this is before us is any extension of service outside the city limits needs to come before the council. Is that your recollection?
correct.
Now, if we, we should have told him to hang quicker, I guess. He's coming?
He's here.
He's here. Sorry.
Well, that's all right. I'm sorry for not being available.
That's okay. You are available. We just hesitated a second or two. You want to just give us a little bit of a quick summary of 04, which is your Hillard Road development?
That's something that we've addressed in a number of ways in the past, and that is service outside the city limits. Only council can approve that service. The sewage lines will be constructed by the developer. It serves a mobile home park there, and we've not actually seen plans for the collection system within the trailer park, but we know what will have to happen in ways of the interceptor that'll serve it. And the developer does that. We're out no money at all, so that's what this is all about.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Mills. There's a motion and second. Ms. Whitby on the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
Resolution 0906, Mayor Hayes.
I think, Mr. Voiles, are you still out there? We need to wait on that one, don't we?
That's the one, yeah.
That's a companion with the previous 05, so there's no sense in moving forward with that one until we get comfortable with the first one. So with that, Ms. Whitby, I'll hold that, and please go to ordinances.
Ordinance 0901, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of a promissory note to provide short-term financing under Amendment Number 78 to the Arkansas Constitution for the acquisition of tangible personal property, providing for the payment of the principal of and interest on the note, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. First reading.
Mr. Sisson, you want to come to the microphone, and Ms. Ross?
We have an amendment on this one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the one that we passed a resolution about 3 weeks ago where we bought these trucks, and the person who was selling us the trucks had a price, interest rate, but they backed out of it. It was 4.47. We took bids from the local financial institutions, and we got a bid of 2.88. And that's the one we hopefully we will go with. We're working on it now.
Okay, so what you're saying is that we're coming back with a better deal?
Yes, sir.
Coming back with a better interest rate. aren't we?
Yeah, it sounds, so we've already done this once, and we're now getting a better interest
Well, the
rate.
other one was a resolution. We do want an ordinance to issue the bonds. Isn't that right, City Attorney?
Yes.
Okay, all right, well, let's go ahead and why don't we go ahead and
It'd be-
suspend the rules and take it to third reading, and then we'll make the amendment. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move to
Motion to
suspend the rules in place.
Second reading. Motion made and seconded to suspend the rules. Motion made by Robinson, seconded by Taylor. Suspend the rules on the motion. Ms. Whitby?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
This is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a promissory note to provide short-term financing under Amendment Number 78 to the Arkansas Constitution for the acquisition of tangible personal property, providing for the payment of the principal of and interest on the note, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. Second reading.
All right, let's go ahead and take it to third reading and then amend it like Mr. Sisson can, if that's all right.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to suspend the rules on the motion to suspend. Ms. Whitby?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor? Yes. Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
This is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a promissory note to provide short-term financing under Amendment Number 78 to the Arkansas Constitution for the acquisition of tangible personal property, providing for the payment of and the principal of and interest on the note, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. Third and final reading.
All right, Ms. Ross, is this,
The amendment, yes. And on page 2 is the change on the interest rate there, and I'll let Mr. Sisson explain, I guess, what,
I'm going to attempt to explain it. One thing
so we
is-
don't have to keep coming back and back
We'll
and
have to keep
back.
coming- If
That's what
this
it
one,
is.
2.88, happens to fall through, we want to be able to go to the next one, which will be 3.65. And that's
So we need to
which is
fill in
still
the blank.
better than the original one?
much better than the original, yes, sir.
So we need to insert that
Waiving the
interest rate in
bids.
this
All
amendment?
right, what's our amendment?
It's not to exceed 5.5.
The amendment is not to exceed 5.5, but we're not asking any waiver of bids. We're going with the lowest bid here. We just,
Right.
if something falls through on the financing package, we want to be able to
We don't
fall
want to
through
have
on
to
the next
stop in the
bid.
middle of the week and wait 2 weeks to
Correct.
come back again, and then
Right.
another 2 weeks to come back to keep, so we're just saying the 5.5 and then also the days, the 360-day
Right.
basis.
Have you got that,
That's the
Ms.
only change.
Whitby?
Yes, sir.
All right, is there a second to that motion to amend?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Baggett. On the motion to amend, Ms. Whitby?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
All right, now do I have a motion to adopt as amended?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
On the emergency, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
Ordinance 0902, Mayor Hayes.
Let me go ahead and read it, and I think now that we've got Christmas out of the way, and we've got New Year's out of the way, and even last week we got my birthday out of the way, so maybe I can go take a look at that alley now. So let's just read it, and then I'll hold it.
Yes, sir. An ordinance vacating and abandoning an alley in Block 4 of Union Heights addition to the City of North Little Rock. First reading.
All right, now we'll hold it.
Yes, sir.
Oops.
I went to look at that alley today, and I'd just like to say one thing.
Okay.
There's a car parked right in the middle of the alley. You can't get down the alley. So it basically looks abandoned to me. That's all I've got to say. There's boards piled up.
I don't know if Mr.
Cars been
Wa-
parked there for quite a while.
Okay, well,
Might need to call code on that
Well,
one.
one of the things I think we were a little concerned about is that there may be an easement or there may be some utilities down part of it. Mr. Voles, would you help take a look at that and as well have Mr. Ward take a look at the alley? And then I'll look at it between now and the next council meeting because we were a little concerned about closing the whole thing. I think we were thinking that half of it might work. So, I'd sure like you, Mr. Ward, and any other potential utilities that we have down there to take a look so we can act on that the next council meeting. And let me know. Thank you, Ms. Ross. Next item.
Ordinance 0903, Alderman Ross and Robinson.
Please call it.
An ordinance restricting the hours of business for peddlers, amending North Little Rock Municipal Code, Section 74-3, first reading.
Move to suspend the rules, placed on second reading.
Second.
On the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
An ordinance restricting the hours of business for peddlers, amending North Little Rock Municipal Code, Section 74-3, second reading.
Move to suspend the rules, place on the third reading.
For a second?
Second.
On the motion?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
An ordinance restricting the hours of business for peddlers, amending North Little Rock Municipal Code, Section 74-3, third and final reading.
Alderman Ross?
I just kind of want to explain what this is, that, I've had, there's some single women that live by themselves, and they have peddlers come to their door after dark. They don't want to turn on your street light because you've got, you don't want to turn on your porch light because you don't want them to know you're there, and you can't see out the peephole, and it's terrifying for some people. And I don't care what time we set it, just so that there's nobody coming to their door after dark. And the Naval Observatory time that Mr. Carter came up with, I said, the police and the code, they need a time. They need a time, and so that's where that time came up with, and each peddler could be given this list of times so they would know when to be off the streets.
And let me, Alderwoman Robinson, go ahead.
Well, the only thing that I was going to say about the legislation is that I have had, complaints from people in Ward 2, about peddlers, at night knocking on their doors to sell books and different things, and there was just some real concern.
The one thing that I can say is I think is the amendment. Are you going to make the amendment?
Well, I have an amendment here that I'd like to pass out just to look at. I don't know if we want to go that far tonight. That might be some other things, but I do have a copy. Where is it?
Mayor, I got a question too.
Height? Go ahead.
Whenever it's my turn.
Okay, well, it may be your turn. Alderwoman Ross, we're passing out an amendment.
I'm going to pass out these to look at,
Okay.
to see if you would even want to. What these amendments are, I'll just take one, we'll pass it around. What this is, after talking to Chief Bradley, and he could come up here too if he would like, but Chief Bradley and I were discussing the peddler's license, and the peddler's license are good for till the end of the year, till December the 31st. So you could come in on January the 1st, even though you're still not working for that company, that peddler license is still out there. You could go to the door with your license, and, if I see someone with a North Little Rock license, I'm going to assume that it's, that they're legitimate, but they may not even be working for that company anymore. But they would still have their license. So Chief Bradley and I were discussing possibly putting a shorter time limit, maybe 30 days, 60 days on a peddler license. Most of these companies that come in, they're not here that long. And that's just something that I wanted to discuss on this amendment. While we were doing the hours, I thought we'd just go ahead and do it all at one time.
That's what I was going to bring up, was the hours. This chart that you've got here, the chart is a moving target, kind of, and the latest that the sun sets, according to this, is 1926, which would be 7:26, correct?
Then,
Read at the bottom,
daylight savings
you have to
time.
add an hour for
And then
daylight savings
daylight
time.
saving time. So why don't, going to question why we don't just set a specific time period like normal business hours of 9 to 6 or 8 to 5 or something like that and restrict it.
6
That way,
o'clock is fine to me.
there's no guess as to whether or not the sun is set. Like you said, the sun could be casting a big shadow behind Pinnacle Mountain, and somebody says that the sun hadn't officially set yet. So I wonder if we couldn't consider amending this legislation to set a specific time period as opposed to going by the Astronomical Applications Department of U.S. Naval Observatory schedule.
Well, let me turn it over to, first of all, our city attorney or Alderwoman Ross. I think we all know that during the summertime, we're out there till almost 9 o'clock before the sun goes down, but in the wintertime, 5 o'clock, it's dark. So that's a pretty broad, we'll say, variation, but it's not my legislation.
I'd just make two brief comments. One is, the rule is sunset. That's the rule. Sunset or 8 p.m., whichever one's earlier, you've got to stop. The only reason to have a table of reference is in case we end up in court and there's some dispute over it wasn't sunset yet. Well, then we can settle that dispute in court by reference to a table. But the rule is sunset or 8 p.m., whichever one's earlier, you got to stop. So that's as far as that rule would go. So it's just trying to put attach another legal definition, I guess, to sunset. As far as the additional amendment, I'm not opposed to the additional amendment. The only thing that I'd provided kind of food for thought is it might not be a bad idea to really relook at our peddler ordinances and some of these for itinerant merchants and transit merchants, as those are defined under state law, and update those codes. I know that's taking a bigger bite at the problem. But some of the code that we have on the book is a little older, and rather than piecemeal the legislation along, we may want to take a more global approach to it. I'm not saying don't adopt these, but I am saying that section of our code needs some more work.
This has come up in a couple of the neighborhood association meetings that I've attended in the last several months about people knocking on people's doors and trying to sell something, and then whether or not they had on proper identification was not the real issue. It was just the fact that they invaded people's privacy by getting in their face in their front yard or whatever, no matter what time of day or night it was. So I think your idea of maybe taking a look at that set of rules and regulations concerning peddlers wouldn't be a bad idea, of which one of them would be to consider the hours of day or night or what days of the week that they can and cannot solicit in the neighborhoods.
Alderwoman Ross?
I think it's great, because like you said, when you start looking through there and it is piecemeal to get in, the whole thing needs to be redone. So I have no problem with the amendment, but I would like to see a limit, like Chief Bradley was talking about, 30 days or 60 days, so that it has an expiration date. I don't want somebody that's out there for 9 months with something that looks like an official city badge when they don't even work for this company. But now, as far as the hours, I'm pretty firm. I do want to go ahead and do that now. I'd love to have that in place because it's dark out right now. And as far as the time, because I know that right now, I believe, Mr. Reagan, I think it's like $70 for a peddler's license, and that's for the full year. And I could see where we would need to adjust that also and that was another concern. So
I know, and
I would be glad to hold the amendment I'm okay with, but the time, I definitely want to go ahead and have that put in now.
Because I know that in discussions that I had with Alderwoman Ross, for example, I understand UVerse people, which are AT&T people that are trying to market that cable or television opportunity, may be going on for a year. I don't know how long they're going to be out there. So I know one of the suggestions that I threw out, and we don't necessarily need to deal with this, but if somebody comes up, that they may decide on their own how long they think they need it, that they only use it for whoever they're indicating that they represent, that they're representing. In other words, you couldn't get a UVerse, deal and go out and represent an alarm company. Or when you get the license, you say, maybe $10 a month, and you pay for how long you think you might want it. I don't know. But I certainly agree with Alderwoman Ross in terms of trying to get this in place with regard to the time, and then coming back later, because you're right, it is dark now. So whatever your choice is.
The amendment, I'm fine, we'll wait. I know that Mr. Carter's picked up on quite a few things, but that is something that I would definitely, and I know that he'll get on that and work with Chief Bradley on that also, too, because I'd like to have them involved in that. But on the times, I would like to go ahead and, where are we, on the third reading, or if there's any other questions?
Yeah, I think we're on the third reading, but I think we need to amend it, right?
Are you amending?
You want to go
No.
with you?
Are you
Wait.
proceeding with your amendment?
The amendment was wait, where are we?
We've already done third reading. If you
Okay, no, I'm not going to put the other amendment of
Okay, so you-
limiting
as
the
is.
time, the expiration date. No, I'll leave
Okay,
out
so
the expiration
you're
date.
ready to go forward as is?
As is,
that's
just
in-
that on the
that was
time.
filed.
And I would love to set a time, but with daylight savings times, I mean, we've got to be able to say sundown, they're off the streets.
Okay, is
Just
there a
one more-
motion to, Ms. Whitby, we're ready to adopt on third and final. Let's go ahead and get a motion to adopt on third and final, and then we can have any questions, just to make sure I know where we are. So, is there a motion to adopt on third and final?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, discussion, Alderman High.
Just one other point was, there's a 2.5-hour spread between January and the middle of June as far as when the sun goes down, and so I still think that it would be easier to determine somebody, it's 5 o'clock, you're not supposed to be in the neighborhood, or it's 6 o'clock and you're not supposed to be in the neighborhood, and then rather than them arguing where the sun hadn't gone down yet, it's not 8:30 p.m. So.
If Alderman Height would like to put 5:30 or 6, I'd be more than happy to vote for it. I mean, if you want to put a time.
Sure. I'd love to see it as normal
Yeah, I
business
don't-
hours from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m.
I have a question for,
That's my amendment.
Well, wait a minute,
Well,
we're still, I didn't hear your amendment just yet, you had a question.
I think, Mr. Carter, we had this discussion. I mean, you do have to have, what is the trade, the fair trade, and I mean, there's different practices that you have to follow. I know all the stories you told me about the different things, that,
Well-
you can't prohibit somebody from,
Right, well, you have to allow somebody to,
Right.
to conduct their business. But I think even if you put a limitation, a defined limitation on the hour, if you wanted to be 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., you could make 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And I think that would be enforceable. I mean, I wouldn't see any problem with that.
At this point, I hadn't heard Alderman Height's amendment, but Alderwoman Robinson?
well, I don't think that we should, put a time frame on it saying till, 5:30 or 6:30. I like the legislation, as it is. During the summer months, Alderman Height,
I don't want someone knocking on my
Wait a
door at
minute,
8
wait a
p.m.
minute,
at night.
Hi.
Alderwoman Robinson has the floor.
during the summer months, we know that, daylight, is much longer. And a lot of times, a lot of these peddlers, they like to catch us, home from work, And so if we put it to 5:30, I mean, even though, that's really, especially during the summer months, that's hampering them, So what I'd rather do is, rather than just putting a specific time, I'd rather that we just keep it as is.
All right, well, it is as is, Alderman Height, if you got an amendment, I'll recognize you.
Well, my amendment was 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Let me add one thing, that there is a lot of instances, and I think Mr. Alderman Gaines will agree with me on this, is that a lot of the people that are taken advantage of by people that are soliciting in neighborhoods are considered senior citizens. And senior citizens, at night, they close their doors, they turn their lights off a lot sooner than some people in younger age groups. So I'm just saying that to prevent maybe any rise in the frequency that some of the seniors are taking advantage of, I would like to see that there be a set hour or a set time that the peddlers, the solicitors, have to be out of the neighborhoods. And so I'm recommending that we consider 8 a.m. until 6 p.m.
12 months?
My amendment.
Well, wait a minute, I don't have a second on that.
second.
Is there a second? No, I don't hear a second on that, so before we debate that, let's see if we have a second. Going once, going twice, Alderman Height, motion fails for lack of a second. All right, we're back to the main motion now, which is to adopt as is. Alderwoman Ross.
No, I would just had a comment on his amendment, though, so.
Excuse me?
The amendment, he was making it an hour earlier, and I'm not a morning person. Right now, it's 8 and 9 a.m., and I didn't want him coming at 8 a.m., so that was the, okay.
All right, right now, what's before us is the way that it's been, was
9
filed.
a.m. to sunset or 8 p.m.
All right, okay. Any further discussion on, and we have a motion to adopt as amended, or no, a motion to adopt. No further discussion on the motion. Ms. Whitby?
Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
Witcher?
Yes.
On the emergency, Ross?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
Baggett?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
And Witcher?
Yes.
Ordinance 0904, Alderman Robinson and Taylor.
Mayor, can we discuss this 09?
Sure, you want to read it first before we talk about it?
Please. Okay.
Ready?
Please call it.
An ordinance establishing a grant program for neighborhood beautification from ward drainage funds, first reading.
Can we discuss
Sure,
now?
absolutely.
Okay. We've had some discussions regarding this, and I see that there's an amendment here that I'm not in agreement to for my legislation. So what I propose to do, what I would like to do is Mr. Taylor and I would like to research this further. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold it.
That's your prerogative, as sponsors of the legislation. So it's been read once, Ms. Whitby, and now it'll be held.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Whitby, if I'm not mistaken, that concludes the regular agenda item?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're not going to discuss that one. We're going to hold it.
If she,
Hold it.
we're going to hold it, but if,
Yeah, hold it.
okay.
That concludes the agenda. We're on public comment. Did anybody sign the public comment card, Ms. Whitby?
How about us? We might have something for us.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, Ms., I
have
know we
one-
regularly,
I have one person, but he didn't know if he wanted to speak or not.
all right, well,
Taylor?
I tell you what,
Yeah.
not just yet. Let me, one of our practices is regularly acknowledge any comments or questions from the council before we go into public comment. Alderwoman Robinson.
Planning Department sent out letters back August or September regarding dumpsters, and they were giving businesses until January 1st to have their dumpsters enclosed. And what I've noticed is that there are a lot of dumpsters that are not enclosed. So what I would like to know is, number one, who will enforce that? And number two, those businesses who have not enclosed their dumpsters have had 3 or 4 months to come into compliance, and are we going to give them a ticket?
Mr. Boyles?
We met with Code and Legal Department today about that issue. What we're doing is generating a focus area. Code's going to generate all the violations they can find and then visit about the issues of how best to get compliance. We did send out letters. I have been communicating, and I'll continue as I get calls to work with getting screening. Code would like to research a little more to make sure we're all in agreement as to what's out of compliance, what's in compliance, and how we're going to write tickets and who we're going to write the tickets to.
Alderwoman Robinson?
Well, my only thing is that there are a lot of them out there that are not screened at all, and they have had just as much time as the ones who have screened them. My phone has been ringing off the wall from businesses that have enclosed their dumpsters, and, you know, they're complaining, you know, that there are a lot of them that are not enclosed. So I think we should ticket them.
Tell you what, Mr. Boyles, recognizing this issue and agreeing in part with what Ms. Robinson said, why don't we have an opportunity to sit down with the city attorney's office? If there are large numbers out there, then we will decide on what we feel might be the most prudent way to ensure compliance, and then we'll make a recommendation to the council. I don't know how many are out there, but apparently there are some significant numbers. So if you and Mr. Wadley and Mr. City Attorney, we can get together tomorrow or the next day and decide what would be the most reasonable way to begin a rapid timetable toward compliance or issuing tickets.
Got a question for that, same thing. What, is it the signboard that someone that wants to get a waiver, is that who they come before?
No, the Board of Adjustment, the zoning
Board of
Board of
Adjustment.
Adjustment is designated to grant waivers. They have heard cases.
I know they have. And what if they give a waiver and this city council pass that the way, can we revisit the person they give the group they give the waiver to if we feel it's unfair?
All you can do is change the rules. If we don't like something that the Board of Adjustment rules on, if we don't like their ruling,
Right.
Just like anybody else can, we can appeal the Board of Adjustments. It's a little odd
Can
to
appeal the
appeal your
Board of
own board,
Adjustments
but
to
that's
the-
the way that it works. You have to appeal the
A
Board of
city
Adjustments.
council person would?
The city can. I mean, I can represent the city, and they say, we want to appeal the decision that the Board of Adjustments made, we can go appeal it.
Is there a length of time that we have, since I didn't know that?
Yes, there is.
What's the length, you know? 30
30
days?
days.
And that appeal would be to court, not to the,
Yes, that'd be the circuit court.
Well.
One of the things that we could do.
But it
the other-
happens. It's
But I
a-
would encourage the signboards, since you work with them, just to make sure we uniformly do that for everyone when they give exemptions.
We also have an opportunity to write the rules, amend the
Let's
rules.
rewrite the rules.
Yeah, if we really don't like their interpretation of the rule, we can rewrite the rule and make it a little bit more, we'll say definitive in terms of what kind of variation in interpretation they might have.
Absolutely.
Any other council member? And let me just indicate to the community, when we acknowledge public comment section, and I don't know if we've got a rule otherwise, Ms. Whitby, in terms of, are we asking folks to sign up even before the council meeting? Let me, in the side of erring on, open discussion, let me just go ahead and, unless the council thinks otherwise, indicate that any time before we announce public comment that they can get on Ms. Whitby's list, we'll acknowledge them. But once we introduce public comment, if they're not on Ms. Whitby's list, then we're going to go ahead and move forward. So having said that, Ms. Whitby, we're going to open up public comment tonight to anybody that wants to comment. But in the future, you got to get to Ms. Whitby or whoever's sitting there prior to us saying public comment, or it's not our intent to recognize you. With that, the microphone's open.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Bobby Taylor. Mayor, I've been coming from over there at Beckard and Ford's Cross here for a good bit talking about this dumping. I'm not going to say a whole lot tonight about it. I just want to prime you, the city attorney, and Mr. Wadley. And if we got a problem, I want to see why there hadn't been a ticket wrote or first one thing and another, the evidence and stuff that I've got. And that's all I want to say tonight. I just don't want y'all to be shocked, because there's going to be some stories told, and I've got the evidence. I have never come up here that I couldn't back up. I don't come up here and talk about just any and everything, but when something in my neighborhood is not right, I feel like it's part of my problem, as well as the rest of them out there, and if they want to speak on it, fine. If they don't, that's their problem, not mine. But I do my part, and I'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Good evening, I'm Jim Ard. First, I'd like to tell the new council representatives, congratulations. And apparently no one has showed y'all how to use the microphones. There's a green light on there and a red light. When you push the button, the green light comes on. That means you can be heard. When you push the button, the red light's on. That means you cannot be heard. We do have remote controls. I've done my research back in the control room, but apparently the people that are back here with it don't seem to want to push the buttons to make them come on. They do get paid, I think it's $50 a pop to show up, and there's two of them. That's $100 a session that we're paying someone that's supposed to be back here qualified to work it. I talked to Joe Smith about this and told him I'd be more than happy to sit back there and help monitor it and make sure it come out over the radio, TV channels real good, and he assured me he could handle it. I had to watch this several weeks while I was staying at the hospital, and some of them you can't even hear. But we should have somebody back there that knows how to run this stuff. Second, about giving tickets to the dumpsters. Why don't they give tickets to the ordinance you passed? First one you gave about the dumpster staying open, they refused to give tickets. I think if they go give it for the other, they should give it for that. I want to welcome all 3 new council members. Looking forward to seeing what you can do. Y'all have a good year, and hopefully we won't have to get up here all the time and speak.
Thank you, Mr. Ard. Microphone's open.
Good evening, and I do apologize for filling the request out late. I did not know. Okay, I was just told that I called someone earlier today and told me about the council meeting that we would be allowed to speak at the end, so I didn't know. My name is Sharon Cunningham, and I'm a resident here of North Little Rock, Arkansas, and have been for the last 14 plus years. And I'm really concerned about utilities. I'm here. I really don't know where to begin. I've been having a situation with my utilities, okay, for a few months now, and I struggle to get the bills and all so forth paid, and so, but at the same token, you know, there's something always kind of left in error. Now, people look at me and they say, well, it doesn't look like that should be, but yes, there are people that have problems that, you know, not of. When I think it was last week or so, I heard that there was going to be an assistance for us utility people, and I took note of that, and I went out to the fairgrounds and to get the assistance that was available. Now, my utility bill is quite high, very high, in fact, and when I went out, there was an application I had previously gotten, and I had filled it out, a loan form it's called, and I submitted that paperwork to the people, and of course when I walked out I was very disappointed. I was told that, and I have talked to several people, I didn't know who was at the top of this thing because everybody's kind of passing the buck. You don't know who you're going to get to. Nobody wants to step up to the plate. And so anyways, when I walked out of the fairgrounds there, I was told that they would pay $118 on my bill. Now, while I was in there, I said, okay. I said, well, now, my gas bill's a little high, and I need a little help with that. I gave the gas bill to the individual, and she didn't even look at it. She simply took it and pushed it back my way, and she said, let me get on the little 10-key ad and tell you how much we'll pay. So then she split the $118 that was supposed to be for the electric bill with the gas bill and told me they would pay $59 on each. So I'm a little concerned because I am a taxpayer. On the application that we filled out, there was no indication whatsoever as to cost of living. No one asked whether it's a mortgage paid or rent paid or none of that. No one asked what the food costs would run in the family. No one asked that.
Let me just interrupt you a brief
Yes.
second. Mr. Sisson, raise your hand right over there. Now, it's hard for us to know because it sounded like the fairground is not, I mean, we have hired a company that is supposed to help us decide on our assistance program. That company may or may not have been out at the fairgrounds, but the one thing that's happened, I would dare say you haven't been out to the fairgrounds within the last 10 days, have you?
Yes, I went out. It was the money, those funds were supposed to be distributed on Thursday and Friday. I went out on Thursday.
Okay.
And the lady came out and she announced it, that she says, well, we have, the TV said there was $34 million. Okay, the lady came out the fairgrounds and she announced to those standing in line, we have $7 million. Nobody, don't worry, you know, everybody's bills get paid and so forth and blah, blah, blah. And so, like I said, you know, I don't know where the money, I know there's many counties in the state of Arkansas. I don't think
Not that I'm trying to interrupt you, but we could probably listen all night, and I don't know that any of us would be able to help a whole lot right here at this moment. Mr. Sisson, would you visit with this lady and find out who she might have talked to? I know that we're in a new year, calendar year, that we put some more money in our assistance program, that it ran out last year. And if this gentleman or somebody that he put you in contact with can help us figure out what you did and how we might be able to help.
Okay, because I've talked, and I will go ahead and take my seat and talk to Mr. Sisson, but of course, what I wanted to say, though, is that it's the money, I'm concerned about the money's not being distributed properly, is all I'm saying. You know, I've been here those many years, and I think there's one time when I'd gotten some assistance back years ago, and I don't think it was with electric at that. But I'm simply saying that, you know, so, it's obviously either an abuse or something going on. The money's going somewhere, but it's not, I'm not seeing it.
Well,
okay.
One of the things too, and Mr. Sisson can help you out, I know that based on the program that we have authorized, that there is supposed to folks who qualify and they have to meet certain standards. In other words, you just can't go out there and get it unless you have certain income levels that are low and unless, you know, other qualifications are met. So, you know, again, I know we have done as the best we know how to try to ensure that the money goes to people who are deserving, and if it's not, then help us know what you are concerned about, and we'll try to address it.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and yeah, because I am, right now, I can't work, and so that's one of the situation, is one of the problems. And so, no, like I said, if they look at your mortgage payment or, you know, your rent or what have you, then they'd see where the money's, the vast majority of that, our money's is going. So
Okay.
I will talk to Mr. Sisson. I thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Adjourn, move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
On the motion.
Ross? White? Taylor? Robinson? Gaines? Daggett?
Yes.
Height?
And let me just follow up. One of the things that I am going to encourage, and not bang a gavel too hard, but we're going to ask people to keep their comments of any stage to around 3 minutes. Thanks. We're adjourned.